Does divorce have positive long-term effects for the children involved? This is my topic for the psychology presentation. First, I'd like to begin by defining our terms. What is divorce? The dictionary defines divorce as the ending of a marriage by a legal process, a complete separation between two things. Many make a knee-jerk reaction that divorce is definitely not a good thing. Others say that it teaches valuable lessons and therefore is a positive thing. Yet at the same time, it is becoming normalized in our culture. Rather than a positive or a negative, divorce is being viewed more and more as a neutral thing. However, based upon those lives that have been affected by it, divorce is anything but neutral. In Malachi 2:14-16, makes God's view of divorce very clear. Because he was seeking godly offspring. So guard yourself in your spirit and do not break faith with the wife of your youth. It's fascinating as to the reason why that God gives in Malachi has to do with the offspring of divorce, the children affected by it. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. The children involved when the parents get divorced. Opinion 1. Divorce does have positive long-term effects upon the children involved. This opinion is based upon the thought that there are 7 misconceptions that make divorce bad in our culture. These misconceptions should be done away with. The first of which is parents should stay married for the sake of the children. People would say that the parents are the ones involved in the marriage and therefore it is their decision whether to divorce or not. The counter-argument to this would be that divorce is a selfish decision. We'll come back and discuss more about a selfish decision at a later point. As well as this term, ACOD, is referred to as a derogatory term that should be done away with, to refer to adult children of divorce. I tend to agree with this. I would have to say that they're not doomed to have struggles for the rest of their life. But just as with anything in our lives that contributes to who we are and how we handle situations, divorce is no different. They're not necessarily doomed to have lifelong problems, but because of the effects of the divorce, they may struggle with certain things versus children who did not go through divorce. In my own experience, they may have trouble trusting others, even years after the divorce. Note that this can be overcome. Misconception number 3. Divorce means that you are no longer a family. This is not true. You still can maintain healthy relationships with both sides of the divorced parties. I've seen this happen. However, when you are doing without your dad for most of the month, or doing without your mom for most of the month, only seeing them every other weekend, it does have serious effects upon family and marriage. And this also goes back to the definition of family. It was never man's place to define family or marriage. That's God's place. And by redefining what God says is marriage and a family, you are messing with the core of who this family is. Misconception number 4. Divorce leaves children without fathers. This is not necessarily true. So this is totally debunked. Sometimes divorce leaves children without their mothers. Either way, doing without your father or your mother is very difficult for any child. Misconception number 5. Ex-spouses are incapable of getting along. Not true. But I do beg to ask the question, if divorce is not a selfish decision and the parents can get along, then why was there divorce in the first place? This is something that each person would have to delve into individually, and each situation is very unique. But I would have to say that this is untrue. Ex-spouses are capable of getting along. I've seen it. Divorce causes ex-family. In-laws become outlaws. Not true. You can still maintain relationships with any of these people. However, it's human nature to acknowledge that some of those relationships would become rather awkward or strained. 7. Step-parents aren't real parents. This is not true either. Personally, I have a friend who, because of her stepmom, is the reason that she came to church and the reason that she accepted Christ. Step-parents are real parents and can definitely become that to children, and that's very important. Number 2 is this, that divorce does not have positive long-term effects for children, but instead has negative effects. The first article promotes, family ideas are changing, but this doesn't mean they cannot meet the needs of the children. We've already gone over the definition of family and how God defines that. And there are effects that happen when we begin to mess with that and tear apart the God-designed definition of family. And as far as the last part of the sentence goes, this doesn't mean they cannot meet the needs of the children. The needs of the children can be met. I am acknowledging that 100%. But are they being met most effectively and to the glory of God? This is something that is unique to every situation. In the second article, a few of the author's main points are this. By neutralizing divorce, it causes children to bury the pain instead of healing from it. By saying that it's no big deal, that there shouldn't be any effects from it, but it's just a neutral event in a child's life, they are not allowed to heal from it. And I agree with this because anything that has to do with someone who's close to you, in this case their parents, will have effects on you. It will not be a neutral experience. The first author's misconceptions are formed from skewed and biased data. To illustrate this, the second author points out that the first author reports good results of divorce. Here, for example, is Brian, whose parents split when he was 5. He said, "In general, I think the divorce has had very positive effects. I see what happens in divorces, and I have promised myself that I would do anything to not get a divorce. I don't want my kids to go through what I went through." This is reported as good results. Based upon personal observation, it sounds like Brian has chosen to heal and work through the negative effects of divorce, what he went through, and has turned them into a positive through hard work and commitment so that his kids don't have to go through the same thing. I would like to also point out at this point about observational learning. Instead of learning what not to do by watching their parents split up and then strivingly to overcome this and to not become like your parents, wouldn't a positive motivator work better? Seeing and observing how to have a healthy marriage, how to have conflict resolution, etc. would help them with observational learning as a positive motivator to be like their parents who stayed together. On a side note, why would we want it to be normalized and repeated? By normalizing anything, we become callous to it. Let us not become callous to the sin or to the hurt that the sin causes other people's lives. The trauma of divorce does leave its marks, especially upon the children. Whether they are ultimately positive or negative results depends a lot on the healing that is allowed to happen after the divorce. Personally, my parents are married. They've always been married, but I have a very close friend whose parents are not married, and this is what I see in her that she struggles with. We're going to call her Jane. Jane has trouble trusting people and also trusting God. She feels shuffled around between mom and dad without actually being known by either of them. She has to be perfect and holds herself to a crazy standard of achievement. She has trouble finding joy in life. She doesn't have a good base to base a good home life off of and spends as little time as possible at home. Now, someone who had parents who stayed married could struggle with any of that, finding joy or being content or trusting people. Yes, anyone can struggle with that. But her problems and her struggles were definitely increased and perpetuated by her parents' divorce. With all of this being said, I want to be sensitive to the fact that there are good reasons for divorce, in which case the above analysis does not apply, namely abuse or unfaithfulness. Abuse. If there is danger to anyone in the household, then breaking up the household and removing the innocent from the power of the abuser is critical. If divorce happens for this reason, it can still cause severe effects. Unfaithfulness. Adultery and unfaithfulness can rip a family apart, leading to a break of trust and therefore divorce. If divorce happens for these reasons, they can cause severe effects. In conclusion, the first article promotes greatly the healing or restoration that can happen after a divorce. This aspect is absolutely accurate and very helpful for a child suffering from divorce. Healing and restoration can occur. Incidentally, this acknowledges that the pain and hurt does in fact happen, thus leaving us in need of healing and restoration. Letting divorce and its effects become normalized and neutralized is a mishandling of the problem. However, if the divorce is avoided in the first place, then the effort needed for excessive healing and restoration is not needed. Is this not the best case scenario? The second article examines the effects of divorce, which are very real and I have witnessed personally. Considering the lives that I have seen come from divorced parents, I state quite assuredly that there are both positive and negative effects of divorce. and no one can say which outweighs the other all the time. I've seen so many friends go through this, and right in front of me are the negative effects. Hurt, anger, lack of ability to trust, lack of joy, and struggling with the spiritual concept of family because the physical one has been broken. Still, God's promise holds true that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, in Romans 8:28, that there are positive effects that can come from divorce as well. New healing sought in Christ's name, seeking of salvation, and removal of children from dangerous or abusive situations. God truly makes beauty from ashes, including ashes of divorce. I say ashes, and that may sound harsh. This is because you cannot break apart a holy covenant, such as marriage, without damage happening. God designed families to be for forever, and when you mess with God's design, it always causes problems. Note that these problems can be fixed, and is the result of the healing and the fixation is what I'm referring to as the positive effects. Does divorce have positive long-term effects for the children involved? We'd have to conclude with, no, not immediately. But yes, ultimately, God can bring positive effects from even the devastating trauma of divorce.
The toughest bad.